As the wealth management world shifts further and further from individual stock selection to professionally designed asset allocation portfolios, the portfolio discussion shifts to a risk discussion. Rather than a conversation about the merits of each individual holding in a client portfolio, advisors tend to have an initial methodology discussion about how portfolios overall are constructed. But then the ongoing discussion shifts to whether the portfolio in aggregate is appropriate to support the client's goals, as those goals and market realities shift over time. And this is especially true with retirement income clients. You can effectively think of this shift as a shift in the discussion from portfolio construction to an ongoing discussion about a fit to plan discussion. In other words, does your portfolio continue to fit your plan? In this quick walkthrough, we'll demonstrate how the newly updated SmartRisk helps you have a great risk discussion with your clients on an ongoing basis. This is the home screen of the Covisum portal. And of course, you'll notice all the Covisum tools from Social Security timing and tax clarity to SmartRisk and the overall retirement income planning tool, Income Insight. I'm going to focus quickly on the elements that are important to SmartRisk. First is the Accounts tab. And inside the Accounts folder, each of the client's accounts will be outlined and the individual holdings. So you can see this is just a portfolio of some higher cost, actually, US stock funds that the client holds currently. And they may have a variety of accounts. Over here, you see the risk questionnaire, and the risk questionnaire is intentionally designed to be simple and to complement the Know Your Client forms that you're probably already filling out. But there's two key elements to this risk discussion. The first is about the client's gut. In a bad quarter, if you got a statement that had X amount of loss, what does it take before you'll call me and say, I need to go to cash? What does it take before you might think, gosh, I need to do something different with my money? The point of having this conversation on the front end is to draw a guidepost. And in that way, you're able to better serve as the client's behavioral coach when those inevitable situations materialize. It's really all about having the conversation on the front end initially and then on an ongoing basis. The second question is, in a bad year, how much loss could you tolerate? And the idea here is to have that conversation with the client, but also test that in the overall financial plan. So assuming we've completed those two pieces, we have gone through and entered the client's accounts or imported them from TD or from Redtail or a variety of other sources, we can run our analysis. Now, the important thing about the SmartRisk analysis and what's different than most of the other risk softwares out in the marketplace today is that it's based on a heavy-tailed model. And if you're not familiar with what that means, please do watch one of our videos on using the right risk metrics in your practice. Effectively, it means that our model does a much better job of identifying the real risk in client portfolios. In other words, extreme market events happen far more often than the metrics that most of the risk software in the marketplace use. Most of them are based on a normal distribution or a bell curve. And we know that those extreme market events that happen relatively frequently are also much larger than the bell curve would predict. The heavy tail model that underlies SmartRisk captures those risk events much better than prior generations of models. Now, there are a couple of key points here on this screen. So as you look down the left, you'll see each different account. In general, we're probably going to focus mostly on the client's household, and yet each different account may be allocated differently. For example, Johnny's Roth, since that money is not likely to be used during their lifetime, might be invested much more aggressively than the rest of the portfolio. But we want the overall portfolio to be aligned with the client's gut and their goals. Just think in terms of risk tolerance being the client's gut and risk capacity being the client's goals. And so this first chart, the quarterly risk, is all about the client's gut. Mr. Client, if you got a statement that was greater than, in this case, they said they'd be comfortable with a 25% quarterly risk. If you got a statement greater than that, that's when they start to panic. And so being able to measure the risk in the portfolio and say, how close are we to that threshold? And prepare the clients for those inevitable risk events is what the quarterly risk number is about. Now, the yearly risk number is all about the client's goals. If I take this 35% risk on an annual basis into the client's plan and I apply that this year, is the client still on track to reach their retirement goals? If they are, we know that we have the ability to get through this year and to the next. If they're not, we're able to build contingency plans in advance. So for example, if a client calls in March of 2020 and they say, my portfolio is down 27% this quarter, you'll be able to, number one, reassure them when it comes to the quarterly risk aspect because you will have had that discussion. Number two, you'll be able to let them know either they are on track for their long-term goals or you will have already been able to establish contingency plans for what they need to do if a risk event materializes. That's where the yearly risk comes in. And to the extent that this is an iterative process, circumstances change, expenses change. We need to be doing this at least every year with our clients to continue to make sure that their plan stays on track and their portfolio stays aligned, both from a gut and a goals perspective. Now, the other two charts are important as well. The diversification index is all about identifying whether the holdings in the portfolio react to the same economic factors or not. In other words, is something likely to come out of left field and surprise me? Anytime we see a very focused portfolio like this, where it's 100% equity, for example, we're going to see that it's a focused portfolio. And finally, you see the fee comparison. The fee comparison takes each holding in the client's portfolio and compares it to its peer group and then aggregates it up to the portfolio level. So in this case, the fee efficiency, if you will, of this portfolio is better than 48% of the peers out in the marketplace. It's not very good when it comes to fee efficiency. I also have the ability to compare portfolios. And for this example, I'm going to start a new comparison and I can either reallocate all accounts to one model or I can reallocate to different models by account. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to reallocate all models or all accounts to one model. And what I'll see is the two portfolios will appear side to side. What I'll see is the two portfolios will appear side by side. So in this case, the current portfolio is a little out of line with the client's gut. The proposed portfolio is much closer. It's actually a little bit more conservative than the client indicated they'd be comfortable with. On an annual basis, however, we're much closer. And what we'll also notice is that we have a lot more long-term gain potential given the additional risk. Now, we might want to bring this down a little bit just to bring it right in line with the client's goals, in which case maybe we allocate one of the accounts, maybe the one that we're going to spend from earliest in retirement, a little more conservatively. But you get the picture in that this quarterly estimate is all about the gut. The annual estimate is all about the goals. We see also that there's a much lower propensity to get surprised out of left field because the proposed portfolio is considerably more diversified than the current portfolio. And frankly, whenever you see a professionally designed portfolio, you're likely to see something in the range of 20 to 40% diversification index. And the reason is most professionally designed portfolios, unless they're designed to be one part of a larger portfolio, are really focused on risk management as much as they are on capturing returns. And that's where diversification comes into the picture. Now, finally, when we scroll down to the fee comparison, we can see that the proposed portfolio is well into the green. It's primarily exchange-traded funds with low internal expenses, so it is actually more fee efficient than 91% of the other holdings that could have been used to construct that portfolio. The goal with these 4 metrics is to be able to equip you as an advisor to have a conversation that is focused where the client needs to be focused for the long term. over and over again, iteratively throughout retirement, as that should be your planning process. Each year, it's about revisiting the gut, revisiting the goals, and ensuring that as things change, the client remains on track.